Are you ready?
Welcome to Clutch Time with Mike on the mic. It's your boy Mike, and I'm back with another episode. Today's my first video version of the podcast, so bear with me as I work out all my kinks and everything, but I'm just trying to get right, and I just want to upgrade to doing videos versus just being able to hear it. So, of course, this week we're going to talk about Wild Card Weekend because it is the weekend and it's the playoffs for the NFL. We're also going to talk about two legendary coaches who one retired and one parted ways with his organization. So just to get started, let's go ahead and get right into those wild card weekend picks. So tomorrow, Saturday, the first game we got is the Browns versus the Texans. Um, as much as I love what CJ Stroud with the Texans has been doing, who's going to definitely be the offensive rookie of the year, he's probably going to make first team all rookie NFL. Um, I don't know if y'all have seen Joe Flacco and what he's been doing this year since he was sitting on his couch and then went and basically saved the Brown season. Um, Give me the Browns. Give me the Browns in that game. I believe Joe Flacco's got the experience. He's got the wherewithal. He knows what he's doing. He's been there before. He's won a Super Bowl. And playoff Joe is a real thing. Joe Flacco in the regular season, outside of this season, wasn't really all that special. But Joe Flacco in the playoffs is something to behold and something to see as Peyton Manning, as Tom Brady. Joe Flacco is not to be messed with. The game is in Houston, but Joe Flacco definitely travels with his playoff experience. So give me the Browns in that game. I'll say the Browns win. I'll say the Browns win a close one. I'll say the Browns win the game 31-24. I think they win by a touchdown. CJ Stroud's rookie year comes to a close, unfortunately, but he's losing to a seasoned veteran and a proven winner in Joe Flacco. Like I said, he was sitting on his couch for most of the season, and he got off the couch and came and saved Cleveland's season. I think CJ Stroud's future is bright. I think DeMeco Ryans' future is bright. I think he'll win Coach of the Year for what he's done with the Texans, with all those rookies. And what wasn't expected of the Texans was not to win the division this year. They weren't expected to compete, let alone be in the playoffs. They weren't expected to be a competitive team. But he's turned that franchise around. He's got his quarterback. He's got his defense. The Houston Texans are going to be a problem here shortly, a real problem for the NFL. I think CJ Stroud, within a few years, will definitely be a top 10 quarterback, maybe top 5, depending on how his career goes. But I could see the Texans making noise for years to come. But give me the Browns in that game, 31-24. The next game, the Dolphins and the Chiefs. The Dolphins had a chance to be at home. They had a chance, but they blew it in Week 18 against the Bills at home. They lost to the Bills twice this year, and Tua has shown that, going back to what Cam Newton said, Tua is a game manager. Granted, he's got Jalen Waddle, he's got Tyreek Hill, he's got Raheem Mostert, Devin Achane. I forget the other wide receiver's name that's on that team. He's got weapons, but Tua is the definition of a game manager. Like, they're not. I just don't see him leading the Dolphins against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. And it's in Kansas City, and the weather in Kansas City this weekend is reportedly supposed to be below zero. It's supposed to be like negative 30 degrees with a negative wind chill. So it's going to be freezing. And down in South Beach in Miami, it is warm. So the Dolphins are going to have to adjust to that. Tyreek may be the only one that doesn't need to adjust because he played in Kansas City, but the rest of those guys who are used to warm weather, it's going to be tough for them. It's going to be real tough for them. Give me the Chiefs in that game. I won't say it'll be a blowout because the Chiefs' offense has looked real pedestrian this year. I'll say the Chiefs win that game 28-14. I don't think that the Dolphins will be able to score. I think the Chiefs' defense is very much improved this year. So give me the Chiefs and give me Patty Mahomes at home against the Dolphins. And then Sunday, we got the Steelers and the Bills. Why is this significant? The Bills don't have Gabe Davis, so they're down a wide receiver. The Steelers don't have their leader and best player, TJ Watt. He's out with I believe it's a PCL or a LCL, something wrong with his knee. He's hurt, so he's out. Um, it's in Buffalo. The Steelers defense definitely travels on the road, even though it's going to be freezing up in Buffalo. Um, as y'all have heard me say on this podcast before, I'm not a believer in Josh Allen. I'm just not. He's gonna he's gonna turn the ball over. Like, it's gonna happen. And you can't turn the ball over like he did very badly against the Dolphins last week and think that you're gonna win in the playoffs. That's just not how the playoffs work, especially not against a team like Pittsburgh, whose defense is very opportunistic. And if you throw them the ball, they're gonna turn that into points. Whether it be the defense running it back for a pick six or a fumble recovery or whatever the case may be, or their offense getting on the field and they run it down your throat with Najee Harris or whoever the wide receivers are. I can't think of their names. They're not coming to me right now. But Mike Tomlin will have Pittsburgh ready to play. Because as much as I'm not a fan of Josh Allen, I think he's a superior quarterback to whoever's going to be playing quarterback for the Steelers. So I think that'll be the determining factor. Give me the Bills in that game. Give me the Bills in that game 21-17. I think that they're able to score touchdowns and put it in the box. I think the Steelers will be able to score, but I think that their offense will stall out quite a few times because they just don't have an answer at quarterback, and they're missing their best defensive player on TJ Watt, so they're missing that dominant piece on the defensive line as well as their emotional leader. So give me Buffalo in that game. And then who else we have? We have the Packers and the Cowboys. It's in Dallas, where Dallas has only lost, I believe, one game at home all season. Um, Give me the Cowboys. The Packers, I'm surprised, to be honest, that they're in the playoffs, let alone going to be competing against the Cowboys. I thought the Packers were going to take a step back this year with Jordan Love as their quarterback and not having a lot offensively and not having a lot defensively. But somehow they've made it, and they're in the playoffs as a wild card. They're going to Cowboy Stadium, going against Dak Prescott and that ferocious defense that they've got, and all those weapons with CeeDee Lamb making first team All Pro, who's made the jump from being a fringe top 15 receiver to arguably being top 5, definitely top 10 now, arguably being top 5, depending on who you want in your top 5 wide receivers. Me and my boy Fox had this discussion the other day. Would you put CD in there? I said no because I feel like you got to do it for more than 1 year. But if we're just basing it off of this year, then yes. But if we're talking about overall, then no, not yet. Maybe if he does it next year, if he does it again next year, then I can slot him in my top 5. But he's definitely top 10. There's no question about that. And I believe Dak Prescott made second team All Pro this year. He didn't get it over Lamar Jackson, who I think is going to win his second MVP. So give me the Cowboys in that game. I think it'll be too overwhelming for the Packers. I can see it being a blowout, to be honest, because the Cowboys at home have been top notch. They have been on their game at home. So I can see the game being something like 30-13. And the Packers have their best cornerback, Jair Alexander. He's questionable for the game. So if he's not being able to play, CeeDee Lamb is going to feast on that secondary. Yeah, give me the Cowboys in that game. And then the best storyline of the weekend is the Rams versus the Lions. Why is it a storyline? Because Matt Stafford used to play in Detroit for a long time, and Jared Goff was the quarterback who took the Rams to the Super Bowl a few years ago, who ended up losing against the Patriots. Now Jared Goff is the quarterback of the Lions, and Matthew Stafford is the quarterback of the Rams. So it's a homecoming for Matt Stafford, and it's not a reunion, but it's basically just Jared Goff going against his former team and his former coach who knows his tendencies. So it's going to be interesting to see the game inside of the game there, what Sean McVay is going to come up with for his defense to go against Jared Goff. If I'm not mistaken, when I saw earlier, I believe Amon-Ra St. Brown, the wide receiver for the Lions, made first team All Pro, which he's definitely deserving of that. He's been a breakout star this year. I know Aaron Donald made first team All Pro, the most dominant defensive tackle I've ever seen in my life. If you want to argue with me about it, we can argue about it, but give me Aaron Donald over anybody who's ever played the defensive tackle position. He is just, oh, I would hate to have to block him. If I had to block him, I'd tell the coach, hey, man, I'm probably going to get called for some holding penalties. I might get blown up a few times. That's just being honest. That's just respecting your opponent. Not saying that I would get destroyed every play. I think I'd hold my own. But if he got the better of me, I'd walk over to the coach like, hey, man, it's Aaron Donald, what you expect? Um, Again, another surprise. I'm surprised the Rams are in the playoffs because of the way that they started. I feel like a few years ago when they won the Super Bowl, they went for broke. They spent all their money to upgrade their roster. They went and got Matt Stafford. They gave Aaron Donald an extension. They had Jalen Ramsey on that team. They went and got Odell. They just did everything they could to basically what happened to the New England Patriots. They went for broke to win as many Super Bowls and contend as much as they could, and now it's hard for them to upgrade their roster. But here they are in the playoffs going against Detroit. It's in Detroit. Detroit has been good all year. I think that they really got shafted out of that game against the Cowboys. I won't get into the whole, what happened, but I think they should have won that game. And if they'd have won that game, I think they would have had a chance to compete for the number one seed and possibly have a bye this week. But unfortunately, they didn't win the game. So now that I don't know what seed they are, but they have to play this week because only the one seeds in each conference get the bye. So that would be Baltimore and San Francisco, who are not playing this weekend. Um, but give me the Lions in that game. I think the Lions win 24-17. I feel like it'll come down to the Lions having the ball last, and Jared Goff has shown that he can produce in the biggest moments. He's shown that over this season. He's shown that ability in his career some, not all the time, not to maybe the level of a Matthew Stafford, but I feel like the Lions will be able to keep it relatively close, and I believe that the defense will shine and they'll win that game 24-17. And then the big game on Monday night is the Eagles and the Bucks. It's crazy. Not even a month and a half ago, the Eagles were 10-1 on top of the NFL world, and they were doing it. I'm gonna pick an upset here. Give me the Bucks. Sorry to my boy Ray. Sorry to my boss Shawana. I know she's not feeling the Eagles and what they're doing offensively or defensively, but I don't know where the disconnect is with the Eagles, but they don't look the same offensively. They don't look the same defensively. They just don't look like the same team that they were last year. They look like they don't have any confidence in what they're doing. And I know there's been reports that a lot of that comes from the fact that apparently A.J. Brown, the wide receiver that they got from the Tennessee Titans, apparently he's causing a lot of friction in the locker room about not getting the ball and not being featured on offense, with Devontae Smith being there as well as I can't think of who their tight end is, but whoever that Jalen Hurts is throwing the ball to, is when it's not A.J. Brown, he has an issue with it and he makes it known on the sideline and in the locker room, and apparently that is causing a lot of discord in their locker room. So that may be the root cause of the problems, but I cannot sit here and say that A.J. Brown is the reason they're not scoring offensively and why their defense looks so bad. For whatever reason, their secondary looks very suspect. They can be scored on. Their front seven isn't able to get stops. They're not able to get off the field on third down, and it's causing them to be on the field longer, which is causing teams to go down and score. They can't hold a lead. They were up, if I'm not mistaken, they were up like 21-6 against the Cardinals. The last game of the season, not the last game, the second to last game of the season, they ended up losing. I believe it was 31-28 or 34-28, whatever it was, and they just can't hold leads. And Jalen Hurts doesn't look like the same quarterback that he was last year. That goes back to when you give these quarterbacks big money, will they still be the same player that they were before they got the money? For him, he just hasn't looked like the same guy this year. He just hasn't. And if the Eagles fan want to say that it's this, that, and the third, that's cool. Something's going on. And I will say this. If the Eagles lose after starting off the season 10-1 and going to the Super Bowl last year, I think the head coach, Nick Sirianni, If he got fired, it would not surprise me. And I think if they fired him, I think the first call that they'll make, I don't think that they'll call Bill Belichick because I don't think his personality and all of that would fit in Philly. But if I was Philly and I fired Nick Sirianni, the first person I'm calling is Mike Vrabel from the Tennessee Titans. That was a shocker to me that the Titans fired him. I know they said they wanted to go in a different direction, and I detailed all that in another video that you can see on my Instagram page as well as my YouTube page. But if I was the Eagles and I fired Nick Sirianni, hire Mike Vrabel. I bet you that would instantly turn around the Phillies' fortunes, and I bet money that they would make a lot of noise next year, win the division, possibly make a lot of noise in the playoffs and get back to the Super Bowl with him as the head coach. He's a fantastic head coach. He is one of the best I've seen in the game. Still, like I said, I can't believe that the Titans got rid of him, but I mean, I'm not in that front office. I don't know what happened. I don't know if there was discord between the owners and him or whatever the case may be, but they let him go. He's a free agent out here. From what I've seen, from looking at Adam Schefter's tweets and looking at various NFL insiders, I haven't seen where he's been interviewed by anybody, so I don't know if he wants to maybe sit out a year and then come back to coaching or what the case may be. But if Nick Sirianni gets fired from the Eagles if they lose Monday, if I was Harry Roseman, the GM of the Eagles, my first call is to Mike Vrabel to say, hey, can you come in for an interview? Let's see if your philosophy fits with what we're trying to do here and how that will work. And like I said, if he gets hired in Philly, watch out. Watch out. Watch out. So those are my NFL picks for Wild Card Weekend. It's going to be a great weekend of NFL football. And shout out to the Michigan Wolverines for winning the national championship, beating Washington on Monday night. That was Jim Harbaugh at his best, doing what he does best. He's a CEO kind of coach. He let his offensive coaches coach. He let his defensive coaches coach. And the Michigan defense was able to shut down Michael Penix. He looked very, very pedestrian in that game. And for the running back from Michigan, I cannot remember his name to save my life. But the fact that I believe after 2 carries, he had 2 carries for 87 yards and 2 touchdowns. It was back to back, like boom, boom. And Michigan, I know that there was whispers that they were going to give Jim Harbaugh an extension, but in that contract, a clause was if we give you this extension, you can't then therefore leave and go to the NFL. So from my knowledge, he didn't sign the extension. So if Jim Harbaugh leaves Michigan and goes back to the NFL, I hope he lands in Tennessee because I think he's a good coach, and I'd love for my Titans to have him. If not in Tennessee, I can see him in San Diego with Justin Herbert with a young made ready quarterback, or who else got fired? I know Las Vegas has an opening. If Philly fires Nick Sirianni, if they don't get Mike Vrabel, I can see them going after Jim Harbaugh. New England already hired their coach with Jarrett Mayo. That was in his contract that he was going to be the successor to Bill Belichick. So yeah, man. If Jim Harbaugh leaves Michigan, then they're going to be needing a new head coach, and then going into this new Big Ten, it's going to be rough waters for them. But shout out to them for winning the national championship this year, and shout out to my boy EJ because as soon as Michigan scored, he's texting me, and every time Michael Penix threw an incompletion, he's texting me like, "I thought you said he was going to throw all over us, this, that, and third." So there's his props, EJ. You got it. I gave him his props. Leave me alone. But let's talk real quickly about 2 of the greatest coaches in football history, not just professional and collegiate. I'm talking about in the time that football has been established till today, right now, 2 of the greatest coaches I've ever seen in my life that I would love to play for either one of them. First, let's talk about the GOAT of college football. His name is Nick Saban. He retired on, what's today? Friday. I believe he retired on Wednesday, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I believe it was Wednesday. I think I woke up to that news that he had retired, and I just, I couldn't believe it because I just felt like he was going to be there forever. But he did come out in an interview and state that he spoke with a recruit's mom, and her concern was he's getting older in age. Was he going to be there the entire time that her son was there? So I think when you have to start to get those questions, then maybe it is time for you to step away. And just because just because Alabama didn't win the national title this year doesn't mean that that was a failure on his part. They lost that game, as I've chronicled in detail. They lost that game to Texas in September by 10 points, which was the biggest loss in Nick Saban's tenure at Alabama. And he turned that around. They reeled off, I believe it was 11 straight wins or 10 straight wins, won the SEC championship. They beat Georgia in the SEC championship game, and they made it to the college football playoff, and we're literally one play away from tying that game to go to a second overtime against Michigan. But for whatever reason, it didn't work, and they lost. And Michigan went on to win the national championship. So let's talk about Nick Saban. Nick Saban in his career was 297, 71, and 1. He won 7 national championships, 6 at Alabama, 1 at LSU. He won 11 SEC championships. He won 1 MAC title. He's a 5-time SEC Coach of the Year, 2-time Bear Bryant Coach of the Year, 2-time Walter Camp Coach of the Year, 2-time AP Coach of the Year. He had head coaching stops at Toledo, where he won the MAC championship, at Michigan State, at LSU, where he won his first national title, and then at Alabama, where he's going to be most remembered for what he built at Alabama, 17 years of dominance. From the time he got there in 2007, I believe that first year, I believe the Crimson Tide were 7-6, something like that. They weren't Alabama yet. And then from 2008 until this year, I believe he had double-digit wins every year. Like I said, six national championships. I believe it was, off the top of my head, I believe it was 9 times in the playoffs. He won the BCS national championship. He's just the GOAT of college football coaching. I don't have an argument for you. If you want to bring any other name to that discussion, they pale in comparison to Nick Saban. What he did at Alabama was phenomenal, in my opinion. Like, it just, Nick Saban was the only coach who could literally go to a kid. He'd go to a kid's living room with his parents, look the kid dead in his eye, and look his parents dead in the eye and say, hey, if your kid comes to Alabama, he will win a national championship. Within his 3 or 4 years that he's here, he'll win a national championship. He's the only coach that can say that because they were winning so frequently. They had so much success at Alabama. He dominated teams left and right, teams that thought they had a chance. I forget what year it was, but they played USC in the opening in the first game of the season, and USC came out. I believe USC was ranked like 11th in the country that year or whatever it was, and Alabama was ranked top 5, maybe probably 1 in the country, whatever it was, and it was hailed as a big matchup. And Alabama won that game 54-6. Nick Saban, the way that he preached, the way that his attention to detail, his coaching tree is crazy. Just think about it. His coaching tree is Kirby Smart, 2-time national championship winner at Georgia. Jimbo Fisher, national championship winner at Florida State, who recently got fired at Texas A&M. Ed Orgeron, who won a national championship at LSU, one of the most decorated coaches in college football history. Who else was on that team? Steve Sarkisian, Sark at Texas. Sark, who went to the NFL. Sark, who was the mastermind behind that 2020 Alabama national championship team, who then parlayed that into getting the head coaching job at Texas. There's probably some other people I'm missing, but his coaching tree is long and phenomenal. Nick Saban is fantastic as a coach. I hate to see him go. I hate the college football is losing the GOAT of coaching. It would not surprise me if he went home for a year or two and re-energized his batteries and then came back at some other school and then continued on his dominance and just did like a lot of coaches did. He just coached until he couldn't coach anymore. That wouldn't surprise me if he pulled something like a Joe Paterno and just coached and coached and coached until literally he couldn't coach anymore, or something like my high school coach, Mr. Bob Proley, rest in peace, sir. If Coach Bob coached until literally he was in a cart having to ride around on the practice field to coach the kids up. That's how long he coached. I believe Coach Bob coached well into his 90s until he unfortunately passed away about 2 years ago. But I can see that happening for Nick Saban. And also, Nick Saban did coach in the NFL with the Miami Dolphins, and how different Alabama's tenure may have been, or his tenure at Alabama may have been. He may have never went had he parlayed that Miami job into what he did at Alabama in the NFL by getting Drew Brees as a head coach, or as a quarterback, excuse me, to be his quarterback versus Dante Culpepper. And we know what Drew Brees is. In my opinion, my opinion, I believe Drew Brees is a arguably top 5 quarterback of all time. If you didn't want to put him in your top 5, I understand. I get it. I'd argue with you, but I get it. If he's not top 5, he's definitely top 10. If you're going to tell me that Drew Brees is not a top 10 quarterback, I don't want to talk sports with you. I don't. Sorry. That segues into my next point about having a quarterback making a coach look great, or having great players making a coach look great. As a coach, you have to have players to look good. There's no way around that. You're not going to take the worst of the worst players. No amount of coaching can substitute talent. You got to have talent to be able to win. You got to be able to mold that talent into what you want. And you got to be a leader of men, as I believe that was Shannon Sharp that used to say that, or maybe it was Skip Bayless. One of them to say you have to be a leader of men. And I think this man, Bill Belichick, was definitely a leader of men. Bill Belichick, while these last few years in New England has looked terrible as a head coach in New England, and like I said earlier, I think the last few years in New England, they went for broke. They were spending a lot of money trying to win as many Super Bowls as they could, because they felt like probably Tom Brady's career was coming to an end and he was going to retire as a New England Patriot. But he did. He ended up leaving and going to Tampa Bay and winning another one. He just retired last year, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, last year it feels like it was longer than that, but he just retired last year. So not having Tom Brady, just made the Patriots look really bad. And we can agree to disagree, but to me, my GOAT quarterback, if I could have one game, I want Aaron Rodgers, because I think Aaron Rodgers is the most talented quarterback I've ever seen. But if you're talking about resume, it's easily Tom Brady. It's easily Tom Brady. 6-time Super Bowl winner. I think he's got 4 or 5 Super Bowl MVPs. I think he's got 3 or 4 regular season MVPs. The GOAT quarterback. He's got every statistical category covered as far as quarterbacking. He's got touchdown, passing yards. I don't think he has completion percentage, but completions, games, all of that. Tom Brady has all of that. He played 20 plus years, and Tom Brady can throw the ball, so he should have all those records. Bill Belichick is a head coach. He was the head coach of the Cleveland Browns and the New England Patriots. He's a 6-time Super Bowl winner as a head coach, but I believe he won 8 Super Bowls. I believe he won 2 with the New York Giants, where he was an assistant coach under Bill Parcells. He's a 3-time AP Coach of the Year. He's got 12 Super Bowl appearances. He's got 31 playoff wins, which is the most all time. He's got 17 division titles in the AFC East, which is the most for any head coach. For his career in the regular season, he's 302 and 165. I believe that's good for 4th or 5th all time in wins. And then he's 31 and 13 in the playoffs, as I said, for a career record of 333 and 178. So to me, Bill Belichick is the GOAT NFL head coach. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Yes, he had Tom Brady. Yes, he had good players. But like I said earlier, as a coach, you got to have good players to be able to win. Even the best coaches with the worst players are not going to produce. It's just not going to happen. You got to have talent. And he was able to mold that talent into 6 Super Bowl wins. And everybody couldn't play in New England. It's a proven fact. Everybody can play up there. I think Chad Johnson or Ocho Cinco, I believe he's one of the greatest wide receivers to ever play this game. But even he went to New England and looked real pedestrian. Randy Moss went to New England and revived his career. Everybody couldn't play in New England. Everybody couldn't play for Bill Belichick. I think it took a different kind of player to be able to play for him. And Tom Brady was the best at it for 20 plus years. And that one year that he got hurt. And this is why I always bring up why I think Bill Belichick is the best coach ever. Because the Patriots went undefeated in 2007. They ended up losing the Super Bowl, ended up finishing, I believe it's 19-1, or 18-1, whatever it was. They were 18-1 that season. They lost Super Bowl to the Giants. Then the next year, Tom Brady tears his ACL in the first game of the season with a low hit to his knee, and Matt Castle comes in and is the quarterback. And Matt Castle, up under Bill Belichick, was able to parlay that into 10 wins. I believe they went 10-6 that season. I believe they missed the playoffs. They didn't get a wild card, or they didn't win the division. But the fact that he was able to replace the GOAT Tom Brady with Matt Castle, who parlayed that season into a big contract in Minnesota, I believe is where he went. He parlayed that into a big contract. Lets me further know that Bill Belichick knows what he's doing. The only reason they've looked so bad in New England these last few years is because he's got Mac Jones as a quarterback who looks like he'll complain to the manager at McDonald's or at Cookout or something, like at a fast food joint. Mac Jones just not the answer. He's not. Now, while the Patriots, Bill Belichick's calling Carter's defense. Now, the Patriots' defenses look good. They look substantially better this year than they have in the last 2 years. But I believe it was just because he didn't have a quarterback. Had he been able to get a decent quarterback, somebody who's at least serviceable, I believe that they would have done a lot better than what they've looked this year. But to me, Bill Belichick is the GOAT quarterback or GOAT coach in the NFL, and Nick Saban is the GOAT coach in college. There's no debate there for either. All right, y'all. Sorry, I had some technical difficulties with the audio recording the last portion of the podcast, but I saw I'm re-recording it just so I can finish what I was saying, or so you can hear what I was saying. So basically, like I was saying, it's Nick Saban is the GOAT coach in college, and Bill Belichick is the GOAT coach in the NFL. I don't think there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. The only person that would say that Bill Belichick is not the greatest coach ever in the NFL is Skip Bayless, because Skip Bayless is such a Tom Brady fan. He would say it was more Tom Brady than it was Bill Belichick. But for me, like I said, any great coach has got to have players. And unfortunately for Bill, he had the GOAT quarterback, but that doesn't deter the fact of how great of a coach he is. There's nobody that's ever played for Bill Belichick that will say, oh, he wasn't a great coach. Not to me, anyway. If there are some players that feel that way, that's cool, that's fine, whatever. I think the college players would say the same thing about Nick Saban. I think Nick Saban is the reason why they all went to Alabama to play for him. And Nick Saban was able to, like I say, parlay his success into always being at the top of the recruiting world, as far as I believe from the time that Nick Saban took over at Alabama from 2007 up until this year. Um, Alabama either had the number one or the number two rated recruiting class. So he was able to recruit with anybody in the country. He could recruit nationally. He didn't have to stay just in Alabama. He could go to Florida, to Texas, to Ohio, California, wherever to get a kid that he wanted to play for him. And like I said, Nick could literally walk into a kid's house, look him in the eyes and his parents and say, hey, we want you to come to Alabama and be part of our program. Now you're gonna have to work and put in the work to be great. If you want to have aspirations of playing in the NFL, you're gonna have to heed what I say and do what I say as a coach. And listen to me, and I'll get you there. But if you're here at Alabama, in the 4 years that you're here, 3 years, if you're that talented, you will win a national championship. Nick Saban, I believe, is the only coach in the history of the NFL or college football that could say that. I don't think there's another coach that could ever say that, because there's not another coach that was winning as frequently as he was. Bill Belichick, while he was in the NFL, I know he won 6 Super Bowls over 20 years, but he went to 9. So he could literally tell any free agent, hey, you come here, depending on how long you stay here, there's a good chance we'll make it to a Super Bowl. Will we win all of them? No, because NFL football is way different than college. But when you've got Tom Brady as your quarterback, you always have a chance to win, as evidence being down 28-3 with 9 minutes left in the fourth quarter against the Atlanta Falcons, and then coming back and winning that game. I believe it was 35-28 or 34-28, whatever it was, but the biggest comeback ever in the Super Bowl. So if you have Tom Brady as your quarterback, you've got a chance to win. And for me, the way that I was raised in football and the men that I play with Coach Knotts as my Pee Wee coach, Coach Cavaco in middle school, and uh, Coach Bob in high school. Uh, I'm sorry. There is no other coach that I'd want to play for in the NFL outside of maybe Mike Tomlin than Bill Belichick. Just because Bill Belichick, the way he coaches, that speaks to me. Um, as far as college, I'd love to play for Nick Saban. The way that he coaches, again, that speaks to me and who I am as a football player and who I am as a football coach now. I would love to play for either one of those gentlemen, and it's a sad day to see them go. Nick Saban retiring and Bill Belichick, like I said, parted ways with the New England Patriots. Whether or not he'll continue to coach is yet to be seen, but I'm sure if he decides he wants to continue coaching, he won't be out of coaching for long. He won't be without a job. He could end up in San Diego with the Chargers, maybe with Las Vegas, maybe with my Titans. Who knows? Who knows? Who knows? Who knows? But that's all I got for y'all, man. Again, I appreciate everybody that tunes in to Clutch Time with Mike on the mic, and I appreciate everybody that listens to me weekly. And like I said, this is my first video version of the podcast. So like I said, bear with me as I work out all the kinks and everything. It's just me. I do all my own editing and all of that. So again, I appreciate everybody that tunes in. This podcast is available on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. And the video will be available on my YouTube page, _345 Mike _. So to be up there here shortly after I get done editing, and go ahead and post it. So again, I appreciate everybody that tunes in. Y'all have a great and safe weekend.